The bird bracket it is. We're going to come back every break now and just talk birds for the month of March because it's ruined. You guys, if you guys hate this, you can blame Coach Autry for it.
They already are. He's already been blamed. He's already been blamed.
I'm giving him another reason to hate him because we're just going to talk birds. Before we get into lacrosse with you and the needs of women's basketball in the portal, Tim Leonard, I'm going to give you the great honor of picking a 1 seed in the bird bracket.
This is a lot of pressure. I guess I'll go the Oriole because I lived in Baltimore before moving up here.
It was unexpected.
Yes, yeah. I was picturing them in an 8-9 game, but they are a 1 seed. Okay.
Is that aggressive? I love seeing an Oriole around.
We may have a 16-1 upset.
It's a great bird.
It is.
I was not expecting it to be a 1 seed.
I've seen them at the Parkway also. Now I'm starting to realize why there's bird watchers out there all
we
the
have
time.
Orioles up here? Do we?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were a little bit like further south.
Yeah, I thought so too. I don't know.
Get over yourselves. There's Orioles everywhere.
You see them around Baltimore.
You act like Baltimore has a different climate than us.
Well, they kind of do.
I mean,
don't they?
Yeah, right.
What would be a 1 seed bird? Now I'm in my head.
Parrot.
Parrot, yeah.
I mean, a bald eagle, I think.
Oh,
bald
yeah,
eagle.
that's the obvious top overall
Pigeon.
seed.
I
Yeah.
think a cardinal's probably. I don't know. I think because of the significance of the cardinal, as we were talking about.
In Syracuse, New York, you're most likely to see Baltimore Orioles, which are migratory birds that arrive in the spring, in May.
Yeah, and then they're
AI is amazing.
Mostly in the southeast U.S., Central America, South America. Yeah, this is a little far north for them, I think.
I just read it. In Syracuse, New York area, you're most likely to see Baltimore Orioles, which are migratory birds that arrive in spring.
Okay.
I should have just said bald eagle and just moved on.
It's okay. All right. So I guess we do see them up here. I feel like they're mostly. I mean, the fact that they live mostly in Central America, South America. It's a warmer climate bird.
The Baltimore Oriole.
Yeah. Okay.
Is a bird.
It is a bird.
That lives in Baltimore.
Yes.
And they migrate up.
Okay. All right. I stand corrected. I don't know
this
that
is going to be the worst.
I don't know that I've seen a Baltimore Oriole in my life in person, but apparently it's possible.
This is going to be an aggressive summer. We're going to be fighting about birds.
Blue Jays.
I didn't think that we could possibly have an argument over birds, but we found a way.
Find a way.
I'm literally reading it off the web.
I think of Orioles being more warm weather birds. That's all. All right, let's talk lacrosse. And this team lost back-to-back games, and everybody was like, "Uh-oh, are they not as good as everybody thought?" These 2 wins, to go and beat Utah, I think that was necessary. To come back and beat Hopkins, if they had lost that game, in my opinion anyway, Tim, I want to get your thoughts. I don't think it would have been the end of the world because there's so much lacrosse left to be played. But the fact they won this one, it seems very significant, almost like it's a statement win for themselves that, all right, you're over those 2 losses, and this is still a Final Four contender. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it was kind of a must-win game, which I think that's often a term that gets thrown around too much, but for sure. You would have been talking this week about, man, they got to start to find some wins in order to just make the playoffs, make the tournament. And now they're in a much better spot, of course, after getting a top 10 win. Felt very similar to the win they got over Hopkins just last year on the same date, where they were kind of in need of a top 10 win after some close calls and ranked games. And here was a good chance against your rival. The meaning of that, you get them at home. And, I think it was a win to get them back on track. Now, at the same end of the spectrum, it's like Syracuse is also – they still need to pick up some more wins here, and they're going to get, obviously, a lot of great chances here, a lot of top 10 games coming up. But the ACC looks a little bit down. The Big Ten looks really good. The Ivy League looks very solid this year. So they're kind of back on track, but – I don't know if they're quite to the level that everyone thought they were going to be at the start of the season. They're not playing like a preseason number 2 team. I think it's fair to say that. Now, I think they've gone from maybe slightly overrated in the preseason poll to underrated as the number 10 team, number 9 team in the polls right now. But it'll be interesting because it's shaping up to be a wide open year of college lacrosse where, to me, there's not really an elite team. There's just a group of very good teams, and I think Syracuse will play their way into that group.
Now, against Virginia and Harvard, Syracuse led at the half, ended up losing both of those games. We heard Gary Gate after the Hopkins game say that they changed up what they did at halftime. What do you make of that?
Yeah, apparently they just kind of didn't go into the locker room and take off their pads and kind of like degress a little bit as much as they have been, and they got out a little bit earlier and went into drills. I think they just basically tried to treat it like the start of the game because they've gotten off to great starts in these games. So I thought that was a good adjustment. I think they definitely did make some second half adjustments in terms of what they were doing offensively as well, and it feels like those tweaks paid off. I thought Owen Hiltz had an unbelievable game. Honestly, like he had 4 goals, but he hit 2 or 3 pipes in the game. It was probably the best I've seen Owen Hiltz play individually. So the offense, I think, is still a little bit of a question mark in terms of how they look against top teams, just because of the same discussion points we've had over the last couple years with, Joey Spallina being your top guy, not a terrific dodger, not really his skill set necessarily. And then the third attack spot is a little bit of a question mark now. Like Trey Deer did some nice things hustle play-wise, and he had a nice turnover on a trail check that was really important in the second half. But Trey Deer came into Syracuse as a box lacrosse star and a guy that's very good at finishing around the crease, and he really struggled in his first career start at attack in that game. He did not finish really a couple open chances on the doorstep. So they went to Peyton Anderson a little bit at that third attack spot. We'll see how they operate that attack position going forward, knowing that Finn Thompson is out for a little bit here.
So you look at who they've lost to, and you were talking about their resume. They lost to arguably the best team in the country at the moment, right? In Maryland, and Harvard, who is maybe better than people expected. So to your point, resume's in good shape at the moment, but they're going to have to keep winning games. They've got Colgate coming up. They've got Notre Dame, Virginia, Cornell. It's obviously a murderer's row. What do you think of the week off? I mean, they're coming off all that momentum of beating Hopkins, and then they got to sit around for a week. Are you concerned at all that this could hurt their momentum, or is it a good thing, given that they played a rigorous schedule through the first 6 weeks? Is it good to get a week off this time of year?
I would be more concerned if you weren't playing Manhattan tomorrow night. I think they're going to beat Manhattan regardless. It's kind of a good, coming off of a bye week, get acclimated, and maybe work on some things and experiment a little bit more, because Manhattan is by far the easiest team they played this year, or the team that they will beat handedly. And I know they beat Jacksonville by a bajillion goals in the opener, but I would expect them to win convincingly tomorrow night. And it's sort of weird how the schedule works out this year, where from there's no weekends off the rest of the season for them. At times, we've seen them have the last weekend of the regular season off, and then you go into the ACC playoffs, and the question is rest versus rust for the ACC tournament or for the NCAA playoffs. You're going to be playing a lot of lacrosse games the rest of the way. So I think it came at a good time. They are banged up, and they've been dealing with some injuries. So, you always need a bye week whenever you get it, really. And this truly came at the exact midway point of the season. It came during the team's spring break, which usually they're kind of taking advantage of spring break to do a trip. I'm sure the players probably got a chance to go home last week a little bit, knowing that it was no classes and no games last week.
If there's one area that you would like to see this team kind of shore up going into the second half of the year and then into the postseason, what is it? What is the biggest question mark, I guess, with this team?
So it's weird that this came to mind, but a little bit offense. Even though we went into the season saying, they're going to score goals, it's more the defense for me. I think short stick defensive midfield group is still the position that I've said throughout the season is the one that is a weakness that I think is going to show itself more against top-tier teams, and it has shown itself already a little bit this season. That's still a concern for me. But just the way that the offense at times goes into lulls and has inconsistent stretches against really good opponents, which if you're talking about, okay, are you good enough to make the Final Four? Are you good enough to win a national title? You can't go into any lulls scoring-wise offensively. And they have had some down quarters, some down stretches. It's weird to call out turnovers as a problem for them, because they literally have the best turnover stat in the country. No one turns it over less than Syracuse at this point in the season. But then you watch them at times, and they have some careless turnovers in the wrong spots. And for a team that is now all juniors from this class, you want to see those things go away. So I still think that's the biggest concern when you're talking about Syracuse against other like top 5, top 10 teams in the sport. How will the offense look for an entire 40 minutes?
I know that they've got a few games prior to getting to Cornell, but, Cornell's in the top 10 as well. Have you had a chance to see the Big Red at all, and what are your impressions of Cornell?
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, CJ Kirst, I think, is going to win the Torretson Award. He's just putting up like 6-7 goals every single week. He broke the Cornell all-time scoring record this week, and they had a big win over Princeton. I think Cornell's a little bit vulnerable defensively, and I think Syracuse is maybe more all-around talented than them, but they have CJ Kirst, and he's the guy that Syracuse lacks, that we keep bringing up, like, oh, it'd be great if Syracuse had that guy you could throw it to with the shot clock going down. Now, I will say, I feel like Cornell, like they lost to Penn State in a game that they just totally blew in the last 2.5 minutes. There was a tough penalty against them, but they fall into a habit sometimes of just, let's just throw it to CJ Kirst and he'll bail us out and he'll be our savior. So it's just fascinating because I feel like if Syracuse had just one guy, then the fan base would be talking about, man, I wish we had more ball movement in late game situations. Now that their offense sort of has that and they have the ball movement, you want what you don't have, right? So then you're talking about, gosh, it'd be good if they just had that guy that could break you down. Like typically in sports, you want your team to not hunker into like isolation mode in the late stages, but that's sometimes what you wish Syracuse had this year. And if you would have asked Duke when they had Brennan O'Neill, they didn't quite capitalize with him, and their fan base was saying, we need to spread the ball around. We need more passing, so that's just how it works. You want what you don't have.
And to that point, it's a great segue into women's basketball because the SU women had that player in Deasia Fair last year. Give it to her, and she bails you out. And they didn't have her this year, and it really did seem to – I mean, we knew that they were going to miss her. They really missed her, especially in close games. I want to say, was it 2-9 in games decided by 10 points or less, something like that, that they just, it seemed like they didn't have that player in crunch time that they could give the ball to, say, go get us a bucket, and we'll win this game. Yeah,
and I feel like that showed a lot in that ACC tournament game where Boston College was coming back, and they have some veteran players, but you're right. I think a lot was put on Georgia Woolley when she was really good as that sidekick to Deasia Fair. And she is a very good player and had a really nice college career. But at the same time, when you're the top of the scouting report and you're seeing the defensive attention that she saw, you can make mistakes. And I just don't know if she was quite ready to take on everything that she had to take on with this year's team. So I think they do need kind of an alpha and someone at the guard position in the portal to feel better about next year's team, or just someone that you can give the ball to in the late stages of a game.
And so along those lines, I mean, who do you expect, and I know it's speculation now, but who would you expect would be back on this roster? And what kind of player, what positions, I guess, are they targeting in the portal?
Yeah, I mean, it is just tough to say. It's the same deal with the men's team. People are asking me who's leaving, who's coming back. Who knows? I think we'll wait and see for the most part, but I would assume Sophie Burrows will be back, and she's a great piece to have back after how she played in the late stages of this year. And I do think they have a nice freshman class coming in. And I will say, I feel like they're in a much better spot from what I've gathered, NIL standpoint-wise. It's kind of the same story we're saying about the men's basketball team. But I think they're going to find some good pieces in the portal based on the resources that I'm hearing they're having this year. I think the percentage of the money that is likely coming from the revenue sharing once that becomes official here in early April, I think it's a decent chunk of money that the women's team is going to get, enough to be very competitive and kind of get them back to the top 25 level, hopefully.
Right. That is good to hear. Tim, great stuff. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Tim Leonard joining us here on the show. We'll hit a timeout. Phone lines open the rest of the way, 315-437-7644. We are back after this on ESPN Radio.